tell us about Tomb Raider Underworld.
So this time out, she's going on a bigger adventure than ever before. She actually is following a thread of Norse mythology this time, but it takes her all over the world because these archaeological sites are actually very ancient, and they've since been covered over by more local architecture. So she goes to see the Mayan civilization, Hindu ruins, but they're all covering more ancient civilizations that are connected to the Norse line.
So what has changed with Lara for this adventure?
So physically, she's much more detailed than ever. She has motion captured animations. She has many more moves that she can do, that the player can do to explore their world. She can balance on beams. She can free climb on some walls. In combat, she can split up her twin guns and fire at different targets at the same time. She's often overwhelmed by more than 2 targets, so she has to melee at the same time to keep them away. She has her motorcycle in some levels where it's appropriate, and it's not a mini game as in the past. It's a fully functioning motorcycle like any other. She's got more gear items as well. She's got a sonar map she can use to map out her environments as she wants. It's hard for me to list them all out because there's so many.
Yeah, I noticed the sonar map. It looks like a really useful tool for an adventure.
It's also been very tricky to try and find a way to give a map to such a 3D space, and Tomb Raiders have always just, good luck, find your way and whatnot. So we're very glad to come up with this way that not only gave players an ability to make their own maps, but to have it be in the fiction of the game, that Lara has to go to different spots if she wants to complete her map to ping from different locations.
Does that also make it a little bit, I mean, it's like almost like that sense of trying to find your way? It's going to be a little bit easier to find your way and perhaps change the pace a little bit of the game.
It depends. It could make it easier, and for people that want to do that, we feel they should be allowed to do so. There are a lot of elements that people can tailor their own experience. We've got the help on demand for people that either get stuck and they don't want to leave the game. They can ask Lara for help, and she'll say how she thinks to solve the puzzle. There are other places that you can tailor the experience if you want to have really hardcore combat or de-emphasize it because you're more into the puzzles. We wanted to have people able to more tailor their experience, even down to choosing tranquilizer guns if you don't feel like killing the animals that you find.
The demo that we got to see started out in the Mediterranean. Can you tell us a little bit about that location and that you actually got the scuba gear on Lara?
That came about very early in production. What we wanted to do was to surprise people with not only a place that you would expect an explorer to go to, but one that we haven't seen her very often in. And the open ocean would be a surprise for everybody to see, wow, I'm not surrounded by stone walls this time, and to be able to swim down and find that ruin yourself without being led to it, that was an important thing for us. So it was a challenge to be able to make places feel like they were free and open when, in fact, like every other game, there are constraints and boundaries, and to try and make them as logical and as reasonable as possible was our goal, so that we didn't have invisible walls anywhere. We just had a language about what she can climb and how she can do it, where she can walk, where she can go, so that players could rely on their own intuition about what makes sense in this space, instead of memorizing a bunch of arbitrary rules about when you could do this and when you couldn't do that. So her grenades have evolved now that she can stick them on objects and she can stick them on enemies. One of our favorite things to do is to try and stick grenades on the nose of a shark. She also has a grapple that is much more functional than before. We kind of hid it in the past. She could pull on some objects and she could swing from other objects, but you couldn't do both. We've actually integrated the whole system, so now you can drag things with your grapple, you can wrap them around obstacles and boundaries, you can rappel up and down walls, you can wall run, you can swing on it like it's a vine, and you can even wrap them around objects and pull on them to make them spin. We have a strong physics engine, but we are now leaving things that you do in the world to be persistent. So the enemies you kill, their bodies stay, they don't disappear. You knock over stone architecture and pillars, and the pieces don't vanish. All those pieces of rubble, all the things you do in the world, we wanted players to be able to leave scars on the place and to still have them be there when they came back. Well, as much as we were proud of the 360 version of Legend, in fact, the engineer that did that is our lead engineer on Underworld. It was a old generation game that was just polished up to go forward. This is that engine, but we built on top of it. We couldn't do it from scratch. We had to do a combination of all that existing technology and physics, and then add a rendering engine and all the details that we need. But the power that we have with all the textures and shaders and light models, and we couldn't make this game otherwise. It's just too big and interrelated and complicated with all of the different interactions that, yeah, we couldn't even come close without this next generation console.
So in your opinion, what is it that makes Lara Croft such a appealing game heroine?
Well, I think it's a combination of two things. One is that she's very strong and independent and fearless, and that in itself is enough to get a lot of action heroes on the map, but then they come and go. The extra piece that she has is she's entirely unique. She has a place in gaming history, and the kinds of interactions that she does, going out into the world, finding these ruins, and the way she tackles those challenges, nobody else is doing that, and nobody else has. She occupies her own place, and people love it, and always will.
So, but do you also feel that there are some constraints with such a well-established character that you actually can't make her do certain things, and is that also something that you think of?
Well, I guess I don't think of them as constraints. I mean, you could ask the same thing about James Bond. You can't see him suddenly having bullets bounce off his chest. Well, but you wouldn't expect that to happen. That's not what you want. We would actually have more trouble by...
And James Bond has been reinvented now with Daniel Craig, so he's a little bit different than the old Bond, perhaps.
Yes, and in fact, we've heard from fans that we have made changes to the Lara Croft character in ways that some are happy with and some miss the old Lara. We actually don't think of it as a change in Lara any more than I think they believe that that's a change in James Bond. It's about emphasis. And he is still, if you write down what makes James Bond, Daniel Craig is still all those things. Lara Croft is still and always will be strong, independent-minded, fearless, and very self-motivated. She doesn't go out there and try and find ways to save villages and people. She goes after these artifacts, she wants to solve these mysteries, and heaven help anything that gets in her way.
And when do we get to play Tomb Raider Underworld?
So we're releasing Tomb Raider Underworld on all platforms in Europe it's November 21.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.